Hello, I'm Chris Flisher, and welcome to Turning of the Wheel, an intelligent, lively discussion on astrology, art, and adventure. Timing is everything, and as the great wheel turns, we are best prepared when we are best informed. Join me as I explore the current planetary alignments and offer insights for coping with change. Educational, informative, enlightening, the Turning of the Wheel is a welcome pause in your daily swirl of constant change. Through intelligent discourse, inspired guests, and educational segments, I will help to enlighten your knowledge of astrology and guide you to accept change as the great wheel of life turns. Call in with your questions and speak with some of the greatest visionaries in the time-tested practice of astrology. Turning of the Wheel, Astrology, Art, and Adventure with Chris Flisher, each week on Turning of the Wheel podcast. Hello and welcome to Turning of the Wheel. My name is Chris Flisher. This is a show about astrology, art, and spiritual venture. And today we're going to take an interesting look at what is to be coming in the year ahead through the eyes of a numerologist. My good friend Micheal John Fierro is going to be joining us today, running the numbers, so to speak. Now, astrology and numerology, I always have said that they are sort of twin brothers from different mothers. Now, that sounds odd, I know, but they share a lot of the similar ideas and data, and they work off a similar premise of what is in store for a person based on their time of birth and what those look like. It's just a different angle of approach, but nonetheless, the theories are there, the data's there, and they're very complementary. When you look at them and you put them together, you do an astrology reading and a numerological reading, you get a lot of the same data, and they sort of validate each other, so they're very complementary in that respect. So we're going to get him on in a few minutes. Just want to make a few quick announcements. As you know, I have a newsletter which goes out every Sunday afternoon about 1:30. In there, I do an overview of the mundane aspects for the planet for the week to come, and then I break it out into individual signs below that for each sign of the zodiac. I encourage you to read your sun sign and your rising sign always, because between the two of them, you'll get a much more granular, accurate picture of what your week looks like ahead. So I encourage you to do that. And that you can get there from turningofthewheel.com. And my other website is turningofthewheel.tv, where you'll find educational videos as well as educational segments on a bunch of esoteric and metaphysical topics, such as tarot and numerology, blah, 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 all that stuff. So it's all there. Turningofthewheel.com, turningofthewheel.tv are my two places. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter, I'm on YouTube. You can find me there. My podcast, this podcast runs on iTunes as well as Stitcher and a number of other outlets, so pursue it there at your will. It'd be great to hear from you. Anyway, without any further ado, let's get on Micheal John Fierro. He's a wonderful acquaintance of mine. I've known him for quite some time. We've done a lot of shows together, going back to when I first was back on the radio, back in the old days, about 10 years ago. He was one of my favorite guests. Always great to have him on. Welcome to the show again, Micheal. It's great to hear from you.
Good to be back with you, and Happy New Year.
Yeah, same to you. So, we have got when we look out at out our windows at the political landscape and the numerological landscape, we see quite an array of uncertainty. I guess in some ways we didn't expect to be where we are, but here we are. And I'm wondering what the numbers look like for the year 2017 from a broad overview, and then we'll drill down later into other more specific, people and perhaps entities.
Well, 2017 is a 10-1 universal year. We just came out of a 9 universal year. We're now into a 10-1 universal year. So I can't really talk about this year without talking about last year. A 9 universal year, as I wrote in my essay, it's an ending year.
Yeah.
It's as it is, even if it's your personal year. So it was kind of incumbent upon us to get rid of a lot of stuff that doesn't serve us last year. Sadly, I didn't see a lot of that happening. And the codicil to that is those things that don't serve the greater good, that aren't gotten rid of, exacerbate moving forward. Mm-hmm. So the caution and moving forward is that we may see things really get worse before it gets better.
Well, that's a natural progression of a pendulum swing. You have to hit that wall before you can come back.
Right. Sadly, I think we might go through the wall before we come back.
We might go through the wall without airbags. Yeah, I know.
Right. And also, the last time we had a presidential election in a 9 universal year was 1980. And that set the tone for the next 36-year period, which ended here in 2016. And as we all know, 1980 gave us Reagan.
Ronald Reagan, another oddball, unknown of, even though he was a governor, he was still not a real live political entity like we thought you'd find in a situation like that. Yeah, a movie actor.
And it ushered in that era of Reagan, where slowly but surely the protections that exist were eroded. He did his best to do away with unions. Then that's where we made that big switch to big government, big business, and corporations having more of a say in things. And it laid the groundwork for these people today that praise Reagan as if he's the second coming of something when he wasn't. So now here we are entering the next 36-year cycle with another unknown quantity. And, boy, who knows what's going to happen. There's a part of me that has some hope for the future. There's another part of me that has a great deal of trepidation about the future because Trump is such a wild card. And he's such an odd personality. No one really, I'm not even sure he knows what he's thinking at times. But
no, very short attention span, and we don't know quite where he's going. I'm not sure he knows where he's going. I'm not sure he was even prepared to win this election. I think this was a complete surprise to him in some ways, and that in itself is indicative of how unprepared he may be.
Exactly, and then you look at his appointments.
Yeah, I know.
And you have to wonder, what exactly are we aiming at here?
And where does
I just read today that he gave Omarosa a job in the White House.
I know. I don't get it. But, there's something, I feel very much the way you do about this whole topic. I feel there are certain things that have been said and floated out there that I feel I'm in line with and I understand and they make logical sense to me. But it's the oddball stuff, these odd appointments and these sort of counterproductive appointments that he's putting in there to people who you would think would be just the opposite. He's really just doing whatever he wants. He got the election, he got the office, and now he's basically just turning his back on everyone. But that's not uncommon for him. So when we look at the course of the planet and the sort of the 10 plus 1 universal year, the 10 boils down to the one, right? So it's a year of new beginnings. Is that correct, as I understand it?
Yes, and in numerology, 0 is in a number. But when it shows up as a 10 over 1 or a 20 over 2, my interpretation has always been that it's a representation of God, the universe, whatever you want to call that energy, working through the first digit. So for me, it's always about a transitional period of time in the realm of the first numbers. So what we're going to have here this year is a transformational year in how we approach things individually. And we need to kind of look at countries as individuals also. So the United States, as well as the rest of the world, have all moved into this thing where there's great potential for new ideas and new initiatives and progress moving forward that could benefit us all. But the negative side of that one is tyranny and authoritarianism. And so how are we going to make this work? My sense here is, and it was very well demonstrated actually yesterday, the voice of the people needs to be consistent, it needs to be loud, and it needs to be relentless. Because, when the Republicans decided that it would be a good idea to go behind closed doors and work to do away with the ethics part of Congress, but the public outcry made them reverse their decision in less than 12 hours.
That in itself is unprecedented, just the simple fact that they did that. That's amazing. A very interesting story. The potential of newness and the one energy as a place to go, as a new beginning, holds with it the promise of that sense of wonder, which we can say is true. We don't know what to expect. This is a new driver of the car, so to speak. And so you don't know, is that driver a stable driver? Is that driver got a good driving record? We don't know any of that stuff. But it is a fact that we are in a new cars, metaphorically speaking, headed towards a new destination, all of which is supported by the numbers. That's what I love about it, is that this really is a new beginning. How that new beginning unfolds is largely up to those of us who are willing to speak up and dictate the direction, I think.
Right, and again, coming out of the 9-year where so much that needed to be handled didn't get handled, that only says to me that these things will worsen as we move forward. So then how are we going to handle conditions that were unacceptable to begin with that are now quite possibly going to be far more unacceptable? How is that stuff going to be dealt with? How are we going to handle it? What are we going to do about it? Again, the one holds great promise. The 1 year is the beginning of the 9-year cycle, so it's very much the time to plant the seeds for where we want to be somewhere down the road. But as with all numbers, there is that negative side. And we do have such, it's like we have Sybil driving this car because we don't know which version of Trump will show up on any given day or at any given hour.
Yeah.
And he's a character, and he's very hard to read. I mean, I look at it numerologically, and I said this from the beginning. He's 7, so very definitely what you see with him is not what you get.
Yeah, no, he is an unusual character, and the attention span and the ideas, it's a wonder that he got as far as he did. I think his approach is unusual and off-putting to people. And this denial of facts, the undermining of government agencies do not bode well for someone who wants to be cooperative. It just doesn't seem like it fits.
Right, and I can say too that I was surprised that he won, but there's a part of me that wasn't surprised because. Say what you will about him, he ran a brilliant campaign in the sense that it was specifically tailored to the America of today, to the American of today, the people with the very short attention span, people who we have a nation that is increasingly becoming much more narcissistic, everybody with their phones and their posting pictures of their dinner and their cat, and every time they turn around, they change their clothes. They got to take a picture. They got to post it. We live in that Kardashian world here, where celebrity has become elevated to something exalted when it has no business being in that position.
Right.
And we live in a country that has a very short attention span.
Yeah.
And he played into that.
Yeah, he did. And he kept his phraseology short. He kept it very simple. He made up phrases that could be repeated on a large scale, like drain the swamp, lock her up. All of those short phrases are quick sound bites that are much more emotive than Hillary Clinton getting up there and talking about how she's going to change, public policy, which is long, drawn out academic things. People's eyes would just glaze over with boredom. And it's interesting because that in itself shows, and I think the comment about narcissism is important because it's a new phenomenon, and I'm sure that social scientists years from now are going to look back at this and say, wow, what did the world go through back then? Where we are on a highway, using that car metaphor once again. We're on a highway where instead of seeing a billboard every half a mile, we're seeing a billboard every 6 inches. And every 6 inches is a new billboard with somebody's new face on there saying, look what I am, look where I've been, look how lucky I am. I'm in Jamaica today, I'm in the Alps tomorrow, wherever you want to call it, however you want to describe it. This is a phenomenon that is really, really unusual. I mean, all of a sudden, this is why fake news is propelled so much, because there's no central governing force that says, yes, you said the right thing, or no, you didn't say the right thing. People say whatever they want, and next thing you know, it goes viral, and across the universe it goes, and we have a scandal on our hands immediately. Really unusual.
Right, and we have a great many people who they don't fact check anything.
No.
They, and now because, the down is up and up is down and black is white and white is black and truth is fiction and fiction is truth. I don't know whether I want to give him credit, but I think he's a large part of that whole thing where he has created the environment where he has the ability to say whatever he wants, no matter how false it may be. And then he just shoots the messenger. Well, you can't trust the media. You know, to me, that's the most dangerous thing that's come out of all of this.
I know, sowing the seeds of doubt.
Distrust. Because if we don't have that check, if we don't have the media having the ability to ask the questions that need to be asked and pursue things that need to be pursued, then he's going to get away with whatever he wants. Mm-hmm. And I've gotten into a great many conversations on Facebook with Trump supporters, and they are totally immune to facts. They are totally immune to logic. They are totally immune to anything other than the worst of whatever he said. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's interesting, and a lot of his staff have gone along with that same approach. I mean, Michael Flynn's son was the one that started that whole thing about the pizza gate. You know, how absurd. That's a perfect example of where things have gone wrong. And what we've done is we've opened the floodgates to let everybody be a news channel, and as a result of that, it's you just pick and choose whatever you want. There's no governing force. This is what the internet in some ways has done, or I think probably more social media than anything else. Social media, I think, really is responsible for this more so than anything else, because years ago when we had the web, people would email, they would post up websites, didn't have the same impact as social media does. Now it's in everybody's phone. They are instantly connected, and it makes a big difference. So
right, and how many quotes have you read that aren't even true?
Yeah.
And how much stuff is they just and they argue with you. Well, this isn't true. And then when you fact check them, you provide a source from PolitiFact or from Snopes. Oh, well, you can't trust Snopes. They don't tell the truth. Well, who are you going to end up believing then?
Well, I defer to the New York Times myself, but
yeah, and as do I. And actually, I find the Christian Science Monitor to be a very well-crafted newspaper.
Yeah, they are good, and so is Al Jazeera is also good as well.
Right.
Yeah, and which is unusual if you think about it.
Yeah, right. How upside down is that? But the fact that the United States media has lost so much credibility, and some of it deservedly so. After the election, I just stopped watching.
Yeah, me too.
The cable channels, because you people are so off base. And what kind of a news organization is it that you spend your entire show interviewing people on the same network who also have a show, and it's the same group of people interviewing one another 24/7, all putting forth their opinions, maybe based on fact, maybe not, but it's just ridiculous anymore. I mean, it's bizarro world.
It is bizarro world, which actually speaks to the astrology of the time, because that is a very much of a, I think that what we witnessed is very Neptunian. Neptune is the planet that casts illusion and doubt and delusion and illusion. There's this elusive veil there. This is very much in that keeping, and so it makes sense that this time aligns properly with the numbers. This is what I love about astrology and numerology together. They really have that cohesive ability to validate each other in some ways, which I love. And in that capacity, we have seen this year go by where much of what we saw as a witness to Neptune came to light. I mean, when Donald Trump walked out on the stage in the Republican National Convention in a fog of, stage dust or whatever you call it, I said, wow, you could not find a more Neptunian character on the planet than that. So, that being said, we saw that come to fruition. Now that we have the numerology that backs it up with the end of an era, which we clearly saw with this election, the end of a time, we are now turning towards this bold new horizon that you mentioned, this year of one, which is a bold new start. When you look back at this historically, you mentioned Ronald Reagan as a barometer or a touchstone for what we're seeing now. Do you think that is an accurate representation of the way we're headed? Are we headed toward a radically, conservative agenda? Numerologically, looking at the country?
Again, with the one, we have potential, and it could go in any direction. But because it appears as though the conservative element and the extreme right in this country has managed to grab hold of power, unless there is an uprising, unless people collectively stand up and say, we're mad as hell and we're not going to take this anymore, and we hold each one of these people accountable, a lot but to me, will show up in the confirmation hearings for his cabinet appointments.
Yeah, I can see that.
Because every day another story comes out. The guy who's for Treasury, his bank was, did a lot of fraudulent stuff with mortgages with the crash.
I know.
And
Jeff Sessions was the appointee for Attorney General, couldn't even get past a selected to be a judge 30 years ago. So it's almost
and then neglected to include any of that information in the paperwork that he had to file.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, it's just incredible. When we look at the chart of the United States, and we look at the birthday of the chart of the United States, we look at July 4th. And then we add in the year 2017 and run all those numbers down. We come down to a 3 again, right?
Correct.
Yeah. And that's the same number that you mentioned that Trump has for this coming year. When you run his birthday, which is 6/14/1946. For those of you who don't know, what you do is you take the 6 and the 14, add 2017 to it. You reduce all those numbers down to 1, and you come up with a single digit. So with the country represented by the 3, and Trump represented by the 3, what does that bode for us going forward for this year? What does it look like?
Well, on the positive side, I mean, the fact that vibrationally he's kind of in lockstep with the United States on the year-to-year basis. I mean, there could be some synchronicity and some symbiotic, activity there that could bode well.
The 3 is typically associated with communication, right? Isn't that one of the attributes?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we can see he's a master communicator, maybe false communication, but he certainly has that communication thing down. That's how he communicates. I mean, we never had a president use Twitter in the past, ever. Nobody even came close to it.
Right. But the thing is here now, the United States is going to go into a 12-3 year. Trump is in a 12-3. And the description of the 12-3, it's a waiting period. It's a change of view. It's a reversal. It's submission.
Mm-hmm.
This is a time that we need to kind of stop, look, and listen. We really need to pay attention. So... Again, he baffles me. This entire thing baffles me. But as I said to you earlier, the thing about it, and it's interesting too, even in the context of the United States, one of the conditions of a 3 personal year is you need to be aware of third-party interference or manipulation of your affairs. So we have Trump, who knows what that third party is lingering out there on the outskirts. And then the United States, well, I think that for the United States, that the third party is the Russian thing.
Yeah, I can see that. There's outside interference. There's no question.
Right. So where will that take us? Again, it's just. It's a very perplexing to me. It's interesting because the last 2 years I've written pretty lengthy essays for my yearly forecasts, both last year and this year. They were both over 3,000 words, and it took me time to write them because they weighed very heavily on me, and it was troubling. Now again with the 9 that we needed to clear stuff out, sadly we didn't. And now as we move forward. Again, the car analogy, look who's driving. And with him, you don't even know if he is driving.
No, I know. It's almost like an autopilot car, or he may be just a puppet.
Personally, I have to wonder what deal was made. My sense is that the Republican Party went to Trump when they realized that he was probably going to win. And I think they cut a deal with him and said, okay, look, we'll support you. But you need to pick this guy for vice president. And notice where Reince Priebus ended up.
Yep.
So they kind of let him win, but I think they've got a little bit of a leash on him, as much as you could put a leash on him. And I do believe that they probably have something on him that if push comes to shove, they will unload.
Right. And they also know that he is, in many ways, he's just a figurehead. He has an unusual style, but most of the hard work that people fear. I mean, there's a lot of pundits out there talking about, oh, this is the end of Obamacare, is going to stop on January 21st, and we're not going to have Social Security on January 21st. These are slow-moving, large organizational mechanizations that are going to take forever to change, and they will be quite some time down the road. I fear more for the younger generations and their inability to perhaps tap into that, because that could very well be on the table for them.
Right. And quite honestly, I mean, they could talk about Obamacare, and I think they've already written the legislation, but they also don't have anything to replace it with. And quite honestly, by passing the legislation, all they're doing is laying the groundwork, but it's for years down the road.
Yeah, it's symbolic.
Because, right, you know, it's ridiculous. And what are you going to throw 20-some-odd million people off of health care?
Yeah.
You think you have trouble now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And my greatest fear for a Trump presidency is what will happen when those rabid sycophant supporters of his
find out
that they've been snookered.
Oh, they are going to be pissed.
What is the reaction going to be of that extreme right-wing, neo-Nazi, white nationalist, anti-immigrant, anti-Muslim? What is going to happen with those people when they realize we've been had?
Well, he's not, he can't just go and open up the coal mines. He can't bring steel manufacturing back. Steel manufacturing is still a very profitable business in this country. The problem is that the human beings are not making the steel. Robots are. That's the problem. Right. It's not so much that the jobs have gone overseas. They're down in Alabama in not even having air conditioning. These dark industrial complexes where things are made by robots that don't require human intervention. We're more a victim of that than anything else, and that's a significant change in and of itself that kind of also points to the idea of where we are historically with regard to the numbers. So it's really going to be an interesting thing to watch unfold. We're talking today with Micheal John Fierro. He's a numerologist. We have had many conversations in the past over the course of this history of this radio show. It's always fun to talk numerology and astrology together because they really do align very closely. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back in a few minutes. While we're on break, Micheal, what is your website? Can you put that out there, everybody, to go?
Sure, it's MichealJohnFierro.com.
MichealJohnFierro.com. That's F-I-E-R-R-O. Is his last name, Micheal John Fierro, one long word.com. He's a numerologist, and it's based on your birth date. And when we get back, I'd like to go through the individual, because what happens, folks, what you do is you take your birthday and your birth month and reduce them down to a single digit. Then you take the year 2017, reduce that down to a single digit, put those two together, and go to reduce it even further till you have one single number. And hopefully when we get back, Micheal, we can go through the whole 1 through 9 so people who are listening can see what their year looks like. Does that sound good?
Okay.
All right. So we'll be back in a few minutes, and hang in there, and we'll be right back. What is your destiny? Where are you going? What is your real purpose? Do you know? Do you want to know? Of course you do. It's your duty to yourself. We are all here for a reason, and we all have great potential. Discover all of this and more with a professional astrology reading. My name is Chris Flisher, and I can help you. Discover your strengths and work on your weaknesses, and live your life to its fullest capacity. Based on your birthday, birthplace, and birth time, an authentic astrology reading will allow you to live your life to the fullest and reveal your true purpose. Only real astrology can give you real information. It is your destiny, and it is your path. Write me at chris@chrisflisher.com and book a reading today, or call me at 978-393-1036. That's 978-393-1036. www.chrisflisher.com.
Astrology is the science of spirit.
and it can serve as an invaluable aid in making the difficult choices in life and seeking truth in all the directions we choose. It holds the potential to allow each of us to evolve to our highest potential. It is the logic of the universe, the code of existence, and the pathway to true wisdom. It is our duty to draw from it the instructions for our lives and to live them to our fullest potential. As the great wheel turns, we are best prepared when we are best informed. As the world shrinks and our barriers come down, diverse cultures are striving for harmony, balance, and peace. To ease the transition, we need to expand with color, light, and tolerance. Now, you can become a global citizen and embrace the color and clear spirit with the divine artwork of the mandala. Mandalas are a timeless artistic offering for creating unity, harmony, and peace. My name is Chris Flisher, and I've spent years creating mandalas, and they are now available online at www.turningofthewheel.com. Come and experience the world of color, form, and function with t-shirts, coffee mugs, note cards, and limited edition prints. These vibrant, lively paintings and products express optimism, oneness, and spiritual balance for all who use them. www.turningofthewheel.com. That's www.turningofthewheel.com. And enter a world of possibility and color. Okay, welcome back to Turning of the Wheel. My name is Chris Flisher. My guest today is Micheal John Fierro. He's a numerologist. Numerology and astrology are very closely aligned. They certainly are validating of each other. And as I mentioned earlier, the pattern, Michael's going to explain to you the pattern, how you determine your year that you are in. We are all in a year based on our birthday. And you take the birthday, the birth month, and the year that we're in and reduce them down to a single digit. And then that number is indicative of the kind of energy you'll be feeling throughout the year. So maybe you can give us a quick lesson on that and tell us how that all happens. And then we'll go through the individual numbers so people can get an idea.
Okay. Well, throughout your life, you go through a continuing repetition of 9-year cycles. They just keep repeating. They're within the context of the 3 major cycles of life. But the 9-year cycles are repetitive. And as you said, they're based upon your birthday. So the best way to look at the 9-year cycle concept is to think of it as a garden. And in a 1 year, you would plan and plant your garden. You would look out in your yard. You would determine where you're going to put the garden. You'd make a decision as to what it is you're going to plant, some tomatoes, basil, eggplant, whatever the case may be. You would go to the hardware store, the garden center. You would buy everything you need necessary for you to get that garden in the ground and going. And if you tend to your garden accordingly, at the end of the time, you will reap what you have sown. And that's what the 9-year cycle is, that in a 1 year, it's the time to plan and plant. Make some plans for where you want to be at the end of the 9 years. And once you lay that groundwork, then in each succeeding year, you do what must be done to implement your plan and bring it to fruition. So in the 8th and 9th years, you should begin to reap what you have sown. Now, once you get to the 9 year, it's the end of the cycle, so it's a time where you want to kind of take an inventory. What serves you, what doesn't serve you. So a 9 year for an individual is certainly a year in which you want to look around and determine, you know, this person here in my life really is more trouble than they're worth. I want to cut them loose. And this situation here doesn't work for me. I'm going to get rid of it. So 9 years, again, you take inventory and you rid yourself of those things that don't serve your greater good, your higher good. So as you move forward into your next cycle, you move forward unencumbered. Now, in a 9 year, some of that stuff will drop off of its own volition, but in other things, you are going to have to be proactive. You're going to have to make a conscious decision and take some action to actually rid yourself of whatever it is that you need to rid yourself of. So, and then the 9 is if you add the numbers 1 through 8, they total a 9. So the 9 encompasses all of the qualities, attributes of the numbers 1 through 8. So in the 9 year cycle, what it does is it accumulates everything from the previous time, and it gathers it up, and then it turns around and it hands it off to the 1 year so it can begin again. So it's this constant progression of passing forward of wisdom and knowledge and experience, whatever the case may be. So depending on where you are in your cycle, there are certain conditions, attributes that are attached to each personal year, and you, again, you work accordingly. And then we have the universal years, which again follow the same 9-year cycle. But the universal year is just determined by obviously the digits of the year, and you always add to reduce to a single digit unless that total comes to a number like an 11 or a 22 or a 33, because those are master numbers, and you would hold off there.
Right. So let's look at the year going forward for, starting at 1 and working our way down. We did a pretty good job on 9. We know that we're pretty well. And we can see that on the level of the United States as a entity. But we're all on different cycles, which is the beauty of humanity. We're all coming from a different place at a different time. How does it look for the year going forward? So we have number 1 as a year to plan and plant, get some ideas moving on where to go, how to get there. When we look at the 2-year for someone, what does that look like for them?
Well, the 2-year is about being receptive and learning to work with others.
Mm-hmm.
In numerology, the 1 is the initiator. The 1 is the idea person. The 1 is the leader, the person who gets out in front of the crowd and moves forward and gets everybody to follow behind. But a 1 doesn't accomplish a whole hell of a lot unless the 2 shows up, because the 2 is the worker. The 2 is the person who implements the plans that the 1 put forth. So in the 2nd year of the cycle, it is a year where you're going to be more inclined to look to work with other people. It's a good year for relationships, development of relationships. And it's also about learning to recognize and understand the differences and the dualities that are in life, the light and dark, the yin and yang, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
2 is about the opposites there. So it's important that you learn to recognize perhaps an opposing view, an opposing opinion. Not that you have to embrace it, but you should at least give it the consideration and look to incorporate it if, in fact, it does work for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. That's sort of in keeping with what happens astrologically. Then we move on into the 3.
The 3 is a year for being creative and moving forward. This is a year in which you want to concentrate on improving your plans. A 3-year personally tends to be a more social year. It can be very active. It can be very, very creative. And as I mentioned before, the caution in a 3 personal year is you need to be careful of a third party off to the sidelines. You may be in a work situation, and all of a sudden you and Johnny start to get in a little bit of a argument or a disagreement about something. And then what you discover is that Betty is standing off to the sideline, and she's the one that instigated the disagreement. So a 3-year is certainly a year that if things start to go a little awry, you want to pay very close attention to who's in your circle. Right. That may possibly be creating conditions that are counter to your plan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. It certainly is in line with the communication, and sociability is very much of a Mercurial or Gemini kind of quality, so that makes sense.
Right.
Then we move on to the 4-year.
Well, a 4-year, numerology, 4 is about structure and organization and foundation and work. So a 4-year may entail a little bit, may require more hard work. And it's certainly a year in which you want to take care of the details and certainly get yourself organized. And it's also a time to kind of shore up the foundation or the base for whatever plans you have going on. Because what you want is a solid foundation, because once you move from the 4 into the 5 is a year of change. The year 5 is a year of adjustments. It's got a lot to do with travel and curiosity and making changes and adjustments. So changes and adjustments are easy to make if you've got that strong foundation that you constructed during the 4-year.
And foundation is sort of taking the energy of the 1, shoring it up, making sure that it can fly, so to speak. You got air in your tires, you got oil in your engine.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
Right. In the 1 year you made your plans, now in the 4 year you're going to make sure that those plans, again, have something solid off of which they can work.
Mm-hmm.
Because, the old house on sand very much applies there. A house built on sand never experienced the 4 year. They never built the foundation.
Right. And that takes us into the 5. The 5 is a year of change and adjustment in astrology. The 5th house would be that of creativity and children, so you could see that coming to light. And that brings us up to the 6th year, right?
Right. And the 6th year is a year, in which you work towards harmony. And 6, in the scheme of numerology, each succeeding number solves the problem or the issue of the previous number. So in the 6th year, it's not only a year about working towards harmony, but it's also a year in which you need to make sure that you are taking responsibility for whatever is going on in your life. And it's also a year very much so where you may end up being in a situation where you have to be in a caretaking position for someone, where you have to take responsibility for someone else's affairs or life or whatever because they need the help, and it's your job to step in and help them.
So like service, so to speak. Service might be taking care of a grandchild or an elderly relative or a partner, something like that.
Right. Yes. 6 is very much a number of service to others.
Mm-hmm.
It's a number of service to others. It's a number of service to community, organizations, whatever.
Right.
But the 6, the prototypical 6 in numerology is the teacher, the healthcare worker, the counselor. It's mom. It's home. So all of that energy that surrounds that kind of thing is very much what the 6 is about. So in the context of the 9-year cycle, it's certainly a year where, because the 5 you can go a little far afield at times. So the 6 kind of pulls you back to, okay, we need to be responsible here. You had a little bit of fun, but now let's get back to work.
Yep, that perfectly lines in. That's very validating with regard to astrology as well. And that brings us up to the 7 year, which is equal to the 7th house in astrology, which would be relationships, I imagine, right?
Right. Well, in numerology, the 7 year, it's kind of a time to, on the 7th day, God rested. And in the 7 year is not an expansive year. A 7 year is a year for you to kind of take a step back and analyze and assess what's been going on. You want to reflect on what's taken place. You want to look at what have you learned over the period of time and then find a way to use that information in moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
But it's certainly a year where you may spend a little more time by yourself. Again, it's not an overly social year. It's not an overly expansive year. It's certainly a year to kind of take a step back, take a look at things, and make those final adjustments and kind of bring it all together, everything that's happened in the previous 6 years.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then that brings us up to the 8th.
And the 8th year is the year in which you begin to reap what you have sown. It's the year where you really begin to reap what seeds you planted in your one personal year. It's a year of accomplishment, advancement, and recognition. It's a good year for business. It's a good year for money. And it's a year of power, but it's also, on a personal level, people need to kind of use their power judiciously. They need to be careful that they don't get a big head or start to use their power.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. Exactly.
Right. So it's a year of activity and expansion, planning and thinking, acting upon the plans, and again, putting everything into final order, and again, beginning to reap the benefits of what you've done over the previous 7 years.
Right. And then when you come to, and we've already discussed the 9, so we know that's pretty much a time of completion and sort of turning over a new leaf or bringing us back to the cycle of the 1. How do you accommodate numbers beyond that? Like you said, the 11, the 22.
Well, the 11 and the 22 and the 33 and the 44 all have the potential of being a personal year number. Now, a 44 personal year is kind of rare, and we really won't see a lot of them because, well, actually we could see them because we're going to have a series of 11 universal years as we proceed. But in an 11 year, now 11 years is kind of the exalted position of the 2. Master numbers are a higher calling of the lower digit. In my work, it's an indication you volunteered to come into this plane at this time to do the particular task associated with that number. So in essence, you volunteered to come back here to do something. So it's important if you have master numbers that you do what you volunteered to do. Mm-hmm. And in the course of the 9-year cycle, the 11 replaces the 2. So again, it's about being receptive and working with others, but it's also being receptive to ideas and inspiration of a higher calling. There's a great possibility of increased recognition for the work that you do and for whatever it is you're putting forth out into the world. And 11 has a great connection to spirituality and intuition and stuff. So it's in the course of that year where you may be a little more metaphysically, spiritually inclined to really kind of look at yourself a little more deeply, and again elevate your actions mm-hmm. To a position that's worthy of the 11.
Now, this the whole basis of numerology is not simply based on numbers of your birthday per se. It's also based on the position of your name, your full name, and the characteristics of that. Do you think one takes on greater significance, or do you look at them as a composite?
Well, in the course of looking at someone's personal year, now, I offer a free personal year report on my website. You can just sign up for it, and I'll send it to you. And if you're a friend of mine on Facebook, you get one every year. But to really look deeply into what someone's personal year is, then you have to take into consideration the spelling of the name, because there's a part of numerology that's known as the essence. And what the essence is, it's a year-by-year breakdown of your life based upon the spelling of your name. So each year you're under the influence of different letters, which total a number. So these are the actions and the activities in life, some of the, for lack of a better phrase, predetermined things that are going to happen. So by looking at the personal year and then the number of the essence and the letters and the influence, I can get a much clearer picture of what may be in store for someone.
And the clarity of that name, is that based on the, say, sort of the birth name, or is it sort of more inclined towards the commonly used moniker for the person? In other words, if my name is Christopher, but I'm known as Chris Flisher, would I use Christopher or Chris?
Well, in my work, I only use birth names.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
Because it's my belief that before you entered this plane, your soul knew who you needed to be and what you needed to do. And it chose a name and a birth date that would fulfill those qualities, even if it means you may have to go through some hardships because there's lessons to be learned there. So I only look at birth names when I do a chart. I'm an advocate about people not changing their name. Mm-hmm. This especially applies to women, obviously, because when you change your name, you change your vibration. And in essence, the analogy I use is the equivalent of Halloween. You're dressing up. You're putting on a costume and pretending to be someone else. And the difficulty with that is your birth name energy never goes away.
Right.
So you can dress up for Halloween, and if you want to dress up as Batman, fine. People externally see you as Batman, but underneath Batman is Christopher.
Right. Got it. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
So the more people change their name, and again, this especially applies to women, the woman who's married multiple times, the more times you change your name, the more layers of vibration you're putting upon yourself.
Right.
And you will eventually get to a point where you're so far removed from who you were that you don't even know who you are. And it's why I always tell women that if you're going to get a divorce, make taking back your maiden name part of the divorce decree, because you'll reclaim your identity. You will go a long way to helping get your life back in order in a manner that is more in tune with who you are and what you're supposed to be.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense,
than you
actually.
Are. Yeah, and also because your last name is the karma of your family of origin. Mm-hmm. So when you were born, your soul knew going into that family that you were equipped to handle that karma. You marry me, and you take my last name, now you've got to deal with the karma of my family name, which you have no idea what it is, and you have no idea how to handle it. Again, it's one of the reasons women have difficulty once they get married, because they're suddenly beset with this entire new set of rules that they don't even realize.
Right. It does make sense to me. It certainly does. You know, that's it. That's a great summation of where things are and an explanation of it. Very helpful. When we look back to the upcoming the election that's happened, and we look at the birth chart of the United States in the 2017 year, and we look at the Donald Trump chart for the 2017, they both are number 3. Now, the fact that they're together, does that bode well for this association, or do you think does that mean that they're in alignment, and will they always be in alignment as they march forward for the next 4 years? Will they always have the same numbers? And if so, is that a harbinger of something good, or is it unknown, based on your knowledge of numerology?
Well, on a year-by-year basis, Trump's personal years will be in lockstep with the United States' personal years. Mm-hmm. So for however many years he's in office, if the United States is in a 4 personal year, Trump will be in a 4 personal year. So in that regard, there could be great benefit there, vibrationally. But how that gets exercised, obviously, is an entirely different thing.
Because the numbers, much like the signs, have a two-sided qualities to them. So if those two sides are out of concert, out of sync with each other, then we can have a problem. In other words, for every whatever planet or whatever house, there's always a two sides to that story. And if there's two sides to the story of the numbers as well, as I believe there are, then we would have that would be in many ways, even though they're the same number, it could be very divisive.
Exactly, because the possibility exists that the United States is exercising. Let's look at the year coming up to 12/3. The United States is exercising the 12/3 on the positive side of the ledger, and in numerology, there's positive and negative aspects to every number. The more negative aspects, the more human the individual is. Mm-hmm. The more you have positive aspects and exercise positive aspects, the more you're on your spiritual side. Most people are obviously a combination of the two. But in the case of the parallel personal years for Trump in the United States, again, it's conceivable that the United States would be on the positive side of the 12/3, and Trump could be on the negative, or vice versa. So although vibrationally it's the same, doesn't necessarily mean it would be exercised the same. Plus, then you also have to look at the essence part again, because what is the essence number of the United States for that particular year, and what is Trump's essence number for that particular year.
Right.
So although there could be synchronicity and harmony, there's also possibility of things not exactly working out the way we'd like them to.
And it will most likely unfold in that 3 energy area, because they both are applied with that. This year coming forward is for each of Trump and for the United States as a general. In general, a 3-year for both of them, but that means that the conflict could come from those associations that you mentioned, the third-party interference, which is right on the money as far as we can see so far. And so that really brings that. It's more like it's the room in which they're the room in which they're conversing, the room that they're in. This is the scene setting, much the way it is in astrology when we're talking about the houses. It's the scene setting where the action will unfold, and that action could be harmonious, that action could be disharmonious.
Right. Right. And for Trump, his essence number for the year that he's currently in his birthday is a 19-1. So a 19-1 essence, and the number here shows the experiences during life. It's the highlights, the turning points, the whys and the wherefores of things, the opportunities that were chosen before you got here. So the 19-1 is a year in which your character gets tested. It brings about regular experiences that call for decisions discriminating between right and wrong.
That's going to be a tough year for him.
Right. And with the 19, because what you have is the 9 working through the 1, and the 9 demands high standards, and the experiences are going to call for high standards. And there's the possibility here of, strange experiences, things that happen due to resentment and resistance, There could be certainly struggles for independence for him. There's a breaking away from old conditions. This is a year in which he should certainly, although I don't necessarily see him doing this, make an effort to improve his thinking and learn to meet things with more understanding. And this is a year of big lessons for him.
It is, but I also think that, having been around on the planet for 70 years, coming up to 71, he also is subject to stubbornness, and you can't teach an old dog new tricks is a good phrase.
Exactly.
He may be stuck in that mindset, which he's lived all his life. He doesn't have a history of being a very humble individual ever, and the type of stuff that you're talking about requires humility, and I think that's going to be a very hard lesson for him to learn or something to espouse.
Right, and another problem I see with him is this is a guy who's always been the boss. This is a guy where all decisions are made by him. He may listen to other people, but the final decision, whatever it is his. Well, you can't run a government that way.
Sure can.
So how he's going to integrate himself into a system that, by design, is interactive and intersupportive, I'm not quite sure how he's going to manage that. Now, he could surprise us, but as you said, old dog, new tricks, not necessarily something. I don't know many 70-year-olds that have an epiphany that suddenly changed their ways.
Not of, this could be that kind of a watershed. I mean, this is a watershed year for him. There's no question about it. He may be, all the things you described about what he's facing are huge decisions that either he puts up with or he walks away from. I mean, have we ever had, we've had presidents resign, but usually under duress. He may resign because he's just like, the heck with this. I'm not doing this. Is too much. I can't deal with it. Even though he wants to. I think he's already won the prize. He's got the prize. He's got everybody's attention. He kind of got vengeance on all those enemies that he keeps talking about by winning it. And now if he has the balls in his court, he could easily exit stage left because it's his call.
That's true, but I don't see that happening because his ego is far too big. To resign would be to admit failure, and He will never, ever do that. So my sense, I always thought during the campaign he would just bail eventually, but my sense is there will be some sort of real or contrived health issue. Mm-hmm. He won't quit. He'll create some sort of a situation again, and it may be out of whole cloth, that says, I can't continue doing this because, I've got my health or whatever the case may be. Yeah, but again, anything like that would still require him to give some indication that he's a human being that has some weaknesses.
Right. And that's something he has not wrestled with. But that would also be an understandable exit. If it came down to it, would be a soft exit, which would be something that would, he could probably sustain if he had to. So that's an interesting comment unto itself. Anyway, that gives us a pretty good idea what's going on. It's a quick summation. Michael does much more inclusive and exclusive and detail-oriented readings if you contact him personally, and I encourage you to do that. Numerology is remarkably rich in symbology and in meaning, and it really does play out well. It does take some thought process to figure out where you are, where you're going, and how you're getting there, but the effort's worthwhile. It's a good complementary modality to pair up with astrology if you're interested in that. It does lend credence to where you are, and it should be supportive in your chart as well. You would see similar characteristics unfolding in your chart. Well, it looks like we're in for a interesting time. It's going to be interesting no matter how we look at it, and that can be taken many ways. Interesting can be good. Interesting can be terrible. But I do believe that the government is large enough and flexible enough with enough checks and balances in there to prevent too much from going wrong. There's a lot of people running around, the sky is falling, but I don't think it's going to fall. I think we're going to get something that is a byproduct of this in some manner. I just don't know if it's the end of the world. So people should be...
I don't think it's the end of the world, but for me, the problem I see here is the fact that we have one party in power.
Yeah, that's the biggest problem. That's going to
The
require.
last time this happened was 1929, and we all know what happened then.
Yeah, we do. We certainly do. Well, anyway, Michael, it's worth cautionary. It's a cautionary tale. It's worth looking into and interesting to ponder what could happen. I do think it's worth our while to be diligent and dogged in our pursuit of that which is right. So those of us who are feeling, damaged because of this, we need not let that get us down. We need to rise to the occasion and be proactive, even if it's in a small local area in your local community. Be active in a positive way that will provide something that is an antidote to what we may feel on the greater level that is bad. So
exactly, and again, that was so aptly demonstrated yesterday when the public outcry forced them to reverse a decision in 12 hours.
Right. Yeah, that's really unusual, and thank God we had.
Right. That was the power of the people, and that's what has to happen. People need to stay. I wrote it in my essay for the year. People need to stay engaged. They need to make sure their voices are heard, and the most effective way is to continually call your legislators and let them know that what they are doing is unacceptable.
Right.
Because if that happens, then they can be backed down.
Yeah. And they will not get reelected, which is their whole modus operandi. If they don't get reelected, then they're nowhere. So they have to be able to respond to that in that regard. So that is a motivator for sure. If Mitch McConnell starts getting an earload from his constituents, you can be sure that he's going to change his tune. So.
Right.
Anyway, I had a great time talking today, Michael. It's always good to have you back on. My guest has been Micheal John Fierro. His website is Micheal John Fierro. It's Fierro with 2 R's.com, michealjohnfierro.com. You look up numerology on the web, you'll find him. He's a wonderful resource, lots of insight and knowledge about numerology, and I encourage you to reach out and seek him out. Michael, thanks so much for coming on today. It's been great talking to you, as always.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, and a Happy New Year to you.
Same to you, Michael. Thank you. You've been listening to Turning of the Wheel with your host, Chris Flisher. To schedule a reading with me or to order artwork, you may visit my website at www.turningofthewheel.com. That's www.turningofthewheel.com. Or you can call me at 978-393-1036. Thank you. And as always, be open to possibilities.